everyone, welcome to another episode of Real Talk. I am your host, Sean Brown, and today we are here with the fantastic Vicki Taufer from V Gallery, who is an amazing family and portrait photographer based out of the Illinois area. And so she is going to be here to talk about the purpose of kind of driving your sales through in-person sales, which is an amazing topic, just because I think that it's something that a lot of people struggle with. They don't necessarily know what to do and how to start. So Vicki is going to be kind of our guide to how to start in-person sales and really just tell her story about how this has really changed the course of her business and her studio. So first off, welcome to Real Talk, Vicki.
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you here. So for those of you who, Vicki is actually I think we kind of got set up through Vicki Black, who was like, you need to have Vicki on for an episode of Real Talk. And I kind of started digging around your work and you're doing some really cool stuff. So for those of you who, for those viewers who might not be as familiar with you as others, kind of give us a little bit of background about how long you've been in business, how you got started, all of that gist.
Yeah. So my husband and I started our business about 20 years ago. And so the industry was a different industry back then, for sure. But still the same story of I didn't go to school for it. It was a passion. I loved it. I started photographing friends, weddings, and a couple high school seniors. And it just started to snowball to where I had to make a decision if I was going to turn this into a business or not. So I think that relates to still most people and how they get into this industry. The difference being it was all film, in a completely different ballgame. But we started out of a studio, just tiny little studio we put in the basement of our first home. Literally, like I set up soft boxes that touched the ceiling and the floor because the ceilings were so low. And
everyone's dream right there.
Yeah, and the one background because I painted it with my mom. So really, really simple start, but was able to grow the business. I really invested a lot in education. So I was learning a lot through the different conventions, conferences, and things. Business started to grow. Eventually, we did rent out a space on the main street in our small town. And after a few years, ended up purchasing that building, which, fun little fact, used to be an old bowling alley. So we renovated this 7,000 square foot space into our studio. And literally over the years, so many changes have happened. We actually moved to Minnesota and my husband worked for White House for 5 years and still kept the studio running. So I've been that person who ran a studio remotely. I wasn't, living here and ran a studio. We've been a studio with 9 employees. And now we're really toned down where I'm the photographer. I have a couple part-time employees. We have 2 kids now. So I'm still running my business. I'm just running it differently. Not quite as crazy 80 hours a week, shooting all the time. So really focusing on quality, not just quantity, and not the volume, but really trying to find, increased sales and the right clients so that I'm not having to work as hard. So we're in the midst literally right now, as in 2 months ago, moved back into the studio, made an apartment in the studio where we're living. So now we're back to living where we work and it's working really well with the ages of our kids, but updating and renovating the whole space again. So
that's so awesome. So that's something I didn't realize is that you were doing basically working remotely from your studio, which I think is a feat in itself. And I think especially something where people are trying to travel and balance work and life. They might not always be in the original town that their studio was in. So kind of what challenges did you find when working remotely? Because it's a little bit different. I mean, it sounds like you might be able to, but then all of a sudden you're like, wow, there's actually a lot of stuff I do in person that I kind of need to be in my city for.
Yeah, I would say, that was one of the motivations for coming back, that we were excited about really giving the business the attention we wanted to give it. It was really hard to not let certain things slide, by not being there all the time. We had I think a key thing is having great people. So, we did still have a couple great employees who were able to still be the face of the business. And that did create, one of the cool things that happened, it created kind of that scarcity principle of, I was only coming back 6-7 times a year. And so people who were willing to wait, people were actually willing to wait for our experience, our photography, and I would fly home and shoot crazy for, 3 days and be super efficient, breathe photography, live photography
Yeah.
for 3 days, fly back to Minnesota and be mom, and then my employees were doing all of the back end work and the editing and getting it prepped for clients. So that was one thing that was cool. I think that happened, is to just see how people were willing to wait. And some people, I think that actually worked to our advantage. But of course, there were times that, I think, we lost jobs and clients because we weren't available. We just weren't here to keep things updated. And so it's really fun to now we're going in and we're literally changing every surface in the studio, getting new images on display. And we just weren't doing that when we weren't physically there. And then on the flip side, it was interesting because I started shooting in Minnesota. And so I didn't have a studio space. So I was kind of running this studio space I wasn't living at, and then trying to figure out where to shoot in Minnesota without a studio space. And also
in 10-degree weather and all of that fun stuff. Yeah.
Well, and starting fresh, nobody knew who we were. So in our Illinois studio, we were established. It's been 20 years. So the majority of our clients are repeat clients. They are clients who are willing to spend the money. They know who we are, what we do. We have a brand. And so then throw me in the big city of Minneapolis, nobody knows anything. And it was really hard I actually had 2 different price lists. I really wasn't running 2 similar businesses there. I ran very separate businesses. And, both worked, but they were different business models. I did a lot more kind of mini sessions and things up in Minnesota that I would say was more quantity driven, getting people in who didn't invest as much, but on the end, if you get 10 people, you're still making a good profit.
So let's talk about that a little bit, is in the difference between business models, where I think we can even go kind of mini sessions, kind of go a little bit more general, where we can say that's kind of all photographers that are designated, say, shoot and burns, where they are a little bit more quantity driven, where they need to bring in the quantity to bring in the desired revenue, versus a studio that you're going to spend a little bit more time with your client, create a little bit more intimate personal experience with them, and then as a result, a little bit higher sales. What have you kind of found as the biggest differences or kind of advantages between one model or the other?
We've done both, and you can be successful at both. We've even done mini sessions, high-end type mini sessions at our Illinois studio where people were spending more money and volume. But I mean, my stage of life I'm at now, I think I prefer in general to be doing, being that red carpet service and doing going that extra mile for my clients that are established. But I have no problem with a couple times a year throwing in a mini session, and some of these people will come back and do that too. So you'll get new clients that way. It's a great way to grow your business. But it's also I do have fun doing both. It's personally satisfying to me to do both. But I'm talking about literally just maybe a handful, just a couple of mini sessions a year that don't take a lot of setup or investment. But it's still nice to offer to grow the business. But what I found coming back, almost all my clients, it's not uncommon for me that I'm investing in them, and that last week I drove about 40 minutes to my client's home to literally take pictures of all her walls, measure her walls, to help pre-design the groupings she should put on her walls, and help pick out frames. And, she's not paying anything for that, that specific service. That is part of what, when you're charging more, that high-end experience that she's not going to get elsewhere. And so that's definitely the direction that we're going now. I'm going to the high school seniors' home ahead of time and helping pick out which outfits, and it's a blast. I'm actually having a lot of fun doing that. I love interior design. I love, creating these wall groupings and things that, picking out paint colors. I've got clients, in fact, the one a couple weeks ago, the senior, I was there helping picking out outfits. They're planning their house for their graduation party, and they have all these images of this girl from when she was a baby, and I photographed her, and they're trying to figure out what to do with them. And literally I'm like, oh, this spot, you need to put a couple shelves and create a collage. I get a text from her that night. I already ordered them from Pottery Barn. They're on their way. And, so then when I went back to the house, the next week, she already had this whole gallery wall set up. So I get a lot of in
Well,
that.
it adds value, but you also get to design a marketing piece in your client's home, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I have a lot of fun with that. So that I think the big piece is to do what you love. And so that is something I really do enjoy. And so that I like to spend my time, and invest in my clients that way. And then on the flip side, they're going to spend that money with me, and so I do find that a lot of people are leaving money on the table by not offering products and not educating your client. That's one of the biggest reasons, and I know we're going to talk about in-person sales, but one of the biggest reasons I encourage people to do in-person sales is because I actually think you're not giving people the best experience if you're not offering that, because people just don't know. So like if they're only looking at their images on an iPhone, on their small laptop, they really don't know that when they order or go get printed, an 8x10 or an 11x14, they don't realize that's not this huge wall portrait on their wall. Like they need help, like most people need help kind of holding their hand, walking them through the process and directing them of what's going to look good, helping them visualize by measuring their walls, by photographing their walls. And literally in a software program, White House has one they're coming out with called Wally. You've got programs called Pro Select, where you can literally design these images. You can go in Photoshop and do it, and pre-sell to your clients, this is what your wall would look like if you did this.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that for a bit for photographers maybe who don't do in-person sales. How do you get started in in-person sales? Like what are like the first steps that you would recommend for somebody that's like, crap, I need to do in-person sales because I can make so much more money through it?
Yeah. I think that I think you hit different walls why people might say, this is why I'm not going to do it. And I think those walls tend to be, I don't have enough time. Like I'm so busy shooting and doing all of this stuff. How do I have time to sit down and do this sale? You have people who might say like, hey, I don't have a sales room or a spot for people to come meet me. How am I going to do that? And I could come back with an answer to all of those things. The piece of not having enough time, you either, half of the 20 years of me being in business, I was not the salesperson. So like I have no issue or no problem. Some people shouldn't be the salesperson. Like sometimes it's easier for someone else to sell for you. So if you don't have enough time or you don't want to spend that time, I would encourage you to team up with a past client who loves your work, a friend, an interior decorator, somebody who you can maybe even have work on commission to sell in the client's home. So like if you don't have that studio, you actually are offering an even better service to go into the client's home. And, even if it's not, you can project in their home. Even at that point, if all you're doing though is using your laptop to sell in their home to them, but you're still measuring the walls and you're able to take photographs of the walls to create groupings to show them what large wall portraits would look like, that is a huge service still. Like you're still helping them with that process and choosing images and choosing what the appropriate size and finishes should be for products in their home and how to decorate their home using, photography. And so I think that, you don't need a studio space to do it. You don't need to be the one to do it. And I also think, from the business standpoint, it's a numbers game, right? If someone's like, I'm too busy, I don't have time to do it. Well, maybe it's really, I think a lot of photographers, in my opinion, need to charge more money, elevate this industry. So if you're charging more, you might not book as many sessions, but you're actually putting the same money in your pocket. You'll find you'll have a little more time to maybe do those extra things, to do a pre-consultation, to actually, go in the client's home to sell. If you're overwhelmed with products, how do I even start? Where do I start with products? Or, scared of that investment of having products on hand. Because, I'm a big believer in you're going to sell what you show. Yep. So, if you have a gallery wall of all 8x10s and you're frustrated that your clients aren't buying 30x40s, then, I would say, well, let's get some bigger images on your wall. People are going to buy what you show them. And so same thing, I have products. I have lots of products in my studio that are the products I like to sell. But if someone isn't ready to make that investment, easiest thing you could do, like White House has these little inspiration guides. I absolutely love these. We've been using these for a couple years. They've got them for seniors, weddings, newborns, families, that it's unbranded. I can hand these to my clients. These are not my photographs in here, but I'm not selling this to my clients as my photographs. I use it as an inspiration. I tell them, hey, look at this the same way you would pick up and look through a West Elm catalog to get inspired, how to decorate your home. this will just give you ideas of the products that exist that you can decorate your home with photography. And so now they're flipping through this, they see a product they love. Yes, I can get that, and now all of a sudden you've maybe sold a product that, you spent $1 buying a brochure for. I hand these to all my clients. There's a matching web link I can email to my clients if you have online galleries. I mean, there's baby steps people can take. I'm not saying go out there and buy a laptop and a projector. I mean, just doing inspiration guides and sending people links to the inspiration guides is like a baby step to selling products.
Yeah, and you can even do proofs and contact sheets and all of that other stuff. And the great thing about those White House guides is I was actually looking at it with one of the other guys from White House, and the best part is it's all unbranded. So it doesn't have any of White House's logos or anything like that. It's all really ready for you to go so that you can hand it to your client without them being like, oh, what labs do you go through or whatnot. It's really more of a purpose of what products can you offer them that they couldn't necessarily get otherwise.
Well, and then the other piece to this that's great is there is a companion guide that for every set of 5, the companion guide gets sent to the photographer. That guide looks the same, except it's filled with pricing, it's filled with information, it's filled with ideas on how to market and sell the products. So you don't want to give that one to your client. That's the one, you don't want
unless you want to sell everything at cost, which I don't necessarily recommend doing.
Right. Yeah. But it's really helpful as far as it's full of great information to help a photographer to get the most out of using the guides and selling products.
So what has been the biggest benefit that you've seen personally in your business from doing in-person sales or providing a service that's a little bit more in-depth that they couldn't get otherwise from, say, a photographer that is allocating all of their time to shooting and not a lot to necessarily client relations?
It's easy. Double, triple your sales. I mean, like it really is. Like I remember, 15 years ago when we first started selling by projection, it literally was taking a film proof, putting it on a machine that projected it onto a wall. This was not digital. This was not using computers. And it was literally to show people actual size to educate them. Like, this is what your image looks like as a 30 by 40. And all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, I'm not lying. You are doubling, you are tripling or more your sales. You will hear that from any photographer who I mean, over the years, will preach that same thing. If you go from not doing anything for sales to projection, it will pay for itself. It'll pay for that projector. It'll pay for that laptop. It's worth the time. It really is. Even if you have to pay someone else commission or someone else to sell it. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I switched to in-person sales, I think my second full year into seniors, and have never looked back just because it's kind of a tried and true method. It really works. It helps drive higher sales, and your clients feel like they're getting a better overall experience. They feel more invested in you and your business.
Yeah. Well, and they'll ask, I mean, that's usually the first question. Well, which one do you think? Well, what do you think? I mean, they've already invested this money and this time, this money for the session, the time, the hours they spent with you shooting. They view you as an artist. They want to know what your envision was. Like, how did you see this being on display? I can't tell you how many people, this is not necessarily seniors, but like weddings, which I, don't really shoot weddings much anymore, maybe one a year, but past clients will show up. Like, I've got all these images and I have absolutely nothing in my home to show for it. Can you help me? And they're willing to pay me whatever to get an album, to do prints on the wall. Yeah. So that money could have gone to that other photographer who shot it. I mean, it's just something to think about. I know it takes a little extra work and to get all of that set up, but it is worth it. It is absolutely worth it. I mean, at minimum, if all you're going to still do is do an online gallery, include pricing in a way for people to order products off of the gallery. I mean, again, that's a baby step. I would still say get the in-person sales. That's better, but that still could start to be a transition to selling those products.
Especially if you're doing mini sessions where you aren't maybe necessarily wanting to sit down with 10 or 12 clients during a somewhat busier time or what have you. Something that at least you can generate a little bit of income rather than just handing them the digital files from the shoot.
And that's interesting because I've done both. I mean, literally, that's one thing when you say, what did your business look like when you were running it remotely? Absolutely, I slacked off in lots of ways. One of the ways is I kind of got lazy, started putting images online. because I wasn't there. I wasn't there to do the sales. My employee was available to do sales, but we just weren't giving my business the love it deserved. And we let things kind of slide. Now that I'm back, I mean, automatically, like, I'm just not even making it an option. I mean, I'm just kind of like, I'm shooting. I'm telling my clients, okay, when can you come in next week to view these? You know, I was a little worried that they'd freak out because for 5 years, you know, we had slowly transitioned away from that, or away from requiring that as part of the process. And people love it. It's like not even like batting an eye. Like you said, they're excited to be with the person they've invested in, and it makes them feel better about that purchase. You know, if they're going to be spending that kind of money, or they want that confidence, you know, from the artist, like that they're doing the right thing, that they're getting the right size, that it's going to be, you know, we guarantee everything too. So, you know, that it's going to be what they love.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's nice just for your clients to hear the photographer say, oh yeah, that looks good. Because after all, you are the expert. You're the one who does this 40, 50, 60 times a year with various clients. And so it's a huge kind of affirmation that they're doing the right thing.
Well, and I, you know, just another example, a couple of weeks ago, I had a mom in here for her senior boy, and it's somebody we photographed last year. She had seen the images online. She wanted now to order, and I'm like, come in, you know, and meet with me. We put everything online, and she was just like, oh my gosh, it looks so much better. Like, you know, she was just, it looked, the presentation, the way the images looked, the images she would have chosen. Plus, if you've got that client who has hesitations for something like, oh, I'm not going to pick that image because the way my hair looks right here. You can be sitting there, oh my gosh, that would take me 2 seconds to fix. Like, if that's your favorite image, let's make this, you know, work. Maybe we could crop it this way, or, you know, that's not a big deal. I could retouch that out. Whereas if they're just being critical and looking at themselves on their phone on these itty bitty images where maybe the coloring on their phone is off, you know what I mean? They're just not seeing them the way they should be presented. You know, you're not there to help them.
And I think that sales to me is trying to overcome any obstacles that your client presents to you. I think that that's any salesperson can tell you that you're always going to face these obstacles, and it's how you as a salesperson to be successful can make that client feel comfortable and confident in their choices. And I think that that's something that in-person sales is phenomenal at doing, just because you are right there. You can hear their concerns, you can hear their objections, and really it presents you an opportunity to sell your own work as well, and say, like you were saying, the hair thing, where it's like, oh, that, no worries, we can take that out in Photoshop, or I don't really like how, I don't know, my face is shiny right here. It's like little things usually. Right. And you're like, cool, I'll fix that in Photoshop in 2 seconds, which during an in-person gallery or an online gallery, you basically put it on and you're kind of at the mercy of, you hope that you shot flawlessly, but we're not all flawless, and we can't all do that with every single image.
And it's also the gajillion people they're sharing it with and getting their opinions rather than, and making it confusing for them instead of really, it's a lot cleaner to like one-on-one, you're with them, you're helping them make those choices. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So we'll kind of end with this. I always like to hear, especially people who've been in business for years like yourself, if you were to go back to, say, day one of your business, what is the very first thing that you would do? If you were, say, relaunching your entire business or had to completely revamp it to get it to where it is today, knowing what you know now.
Well, I feel like the industry has changed a lot. That's a tough question, but I think that, like, I don't really want to live with regrets. So like our specific situation, I don't know if I would change, but on some hands, I do think about, you know, how this building has been a blessing to us. And I think that's one of the reasons our studio grew. But at the same time, it was pretty risky and it worked out. But I probably would have taken things slower with those choices and investing in like having this huge space versus maybe, you know, sticking with leasing a smaller space, lower risk, just because I think you can be super successful without all that overhead. And so that overhead kind of drove our business for so many years to have to succeed. So like on one hand, that's good. Like that drove us to be successful, but that's also was really stressful and really, you know, some tough times in there. Whereas I think, you know, the lifestyle that I want now is not to be so stressful and busy. So it's trying to figure out how to do that and still have this building, so I mean, that building has been a blessing, but it's also, been a burden, at times. So I think that, sometimes people can get starry-eyed and think like, oh, I need like a studio, or I need to spend all this money on all this gear, and I need, spend all this money. Or really, there's a lot you can do and have a very successful business without investing in all of those things, to take it slower.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that, because I do think that photographers get caught up in that they have to kind of have this grandiose idea of what their studio has to be, where it's also like, it's also okay just to follow the natural progression of a business. Whereas you don't see small businesses all of a sudden trying to franchise and rent and go retail in like 40 different locations when they just started their first location. So I think that the same principle can be applied to photographers too, where it's like, you're just starting, let your revenue base grow, let your client base grow. And then from there, you can kind of move up as kind of the natural progression allows you to.
Well, and I think the other thing I would say is hire slowly and fire quickly. That would be some words of wisdom that were shared with us, that when I look back and I think sometimes people, oh, I'm so busy, I need to hire somebody. I'm so busy, I need to hire somebody. Really, it might just be adjusting prices, adjusting some things in your business to be less busy. Because come with employees, you have extra responsibility and again, overhead, that sometimes people can fall in that trap of thinking they need to hire. And there's so many ways you can outsource things nowadays without having to take that on. Not that, I mean, I have our employees are part of the backbone of our business. I love our employees, but we've also had times where maybe we didn't have the right fit of somebody. And that also has burned us, where like, you want to be too nice, you don't take care of the situation, and that just never ends up well either.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, just it's tough, because as photographers, a lot of people tend to be more artistic. I mean, there's definitely people that really balance both. They have the business side, they have the artistic side, and there's other people who are more business, focused and maybe not as artistic. So I think that's super normal and common, but to figure out your strengths and focus on that, and to get the help from, business people, accountants, friends, other, people in the photography community, to help you in the areas that aren't your strengths.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll kind of end. I'm going to ask you to ask a question to our viewers that they're going to just leave down in basically the comment box below on YouTube, that they can then answer the question as kind of a follow-up to this. But first, where can people find you on, say, online, social media, all of that good stuff?
Instagram's V Taufer. So just V as in Vicki, Taufer, Taufer. We've got, I've got my personal Facebook that I probably do more of, Vicki Taufer. But we also have the gallery, and we have, just our website, vgallery.net, not .com, vgallery.net. You can find all of that online as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So now we'll get you to ask the question. So what is one question that you want to ask the viewers? It can be personal, business related, literally anything that you want them to answer down in the comment section below.
Let's say, what, how about for this year? So I'm big in like setting goals, and I feel like it's really important to, kind of work backwards and figure out where you want to be and figure out how to get there. So maybe, if there is one thing, one word, one accomplishment or goal that you have, for the end of 2018, like where you want to be, what would that be?
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vicki. For those of you who are joining us for Real Talk for the very first time, make sure to hit that subscribe button below so that you guys can keep up to date on all of the future Real Talks that we release with awesome other people just like Vicki. So yeah, thank you for coming on here today. It was a pleasure to kind of learn about in-person sales, and then also just kind of your journey of photography and kind of how life can throw you curveballs and how to adjust to it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys on the next Real Talk.
Bye.